What's the best budget computer? If you're the kind of person who filters search results from the least to most expensive when you're looking to make a purchase, you're likely familiar with the struggle of finding a good budget laptop. Often they're flimsy, or they cut corners with slow hardware or terrible screens. The keyboard is bad, and the trackpad is probably worse. Maybe you've wondered whether you're better off taking your chances with a used laptop instead. But you don't want to deal with eBay sellers or putting your life at the mercy of your local classifieds. Well, there's one resource you may be overlooking, and I think it deserves some consideration. The used business laptop. I found out for myself when I ordered a refurbished Dell Latitude 7490. Refurbished electronics are nothing new, of course. Apple immediately comes to mind, of course, as they sell like-new products in shiny new boxes. As it turns out, however, a lot of manufacturers run their own refurbishment programs. Some, such as Dell, use a convoluted system of daily serial numbers corresponding to each machine, a list of which you can consult, and then telephone the company to inquire about it. Others, such as Dell, simply post the available units online, ready to purchase as you would any new device. I chose the latter. And so, after browsing the site over the course of a few days to find the laptop that best suited my needs, I got a used Latitude 7490 on clearance for the, frankly, remarkably low price of $229. What had I done? The unit was said to be in B condition and came with no OS. Otherwise, it was a regular 14-inch Ultrabook-style business laptop with an i5-8350U processor, 16GB of RAM, a 512GB SSD, and a 1080p screen. And that's about the extent of it. While there was a photo to accompany the description, it was a stock image that wasn't representative of the individual unit. So I didn't really know what I got myself into when I made the purchase. When it arrived, I received a laptop that was roughly commensurate to the price that I paid. I say roughly for good reason, judging by the thick layer of crud that encrusted the track point and the sticky adhesive residue everywhere besides. The machine had been clearly dropped at one point, going by the dent in the corner. An obvious wrap had been applied to the lid, likely to conceal cosmetic damage. This is, to put it bluntly, a very generous B grade. Looking at the bottom panel, you can see a large green sticker which reads, "Refurbished to Dell specifications by FedEx Supply Chain," an affiliation that, as far as I could see, wasn't mentioned on the product page. Still, the screen was blessedly clear of any marks, and the internals were fairly clean and free of dust. Even the fan wasn't as dirty as I'd feared. The SSD, while accurate to the description in its capacity, turned out to be a slow M.2 SATA SSD, a possibility I had anticipated after having read a contemporaneous review. So I swapped it for a modest NVMe drive, prices for which have fallen dramatically from when the device was first manufactured. After installing Windows, I was ready to go. So what's it like to use this 2017-era business laptop in 2023? Surprisingly fine, actually. While undoubtedly an older processor, the i5-8350 remains a reasonably performant CPU. After all, the primary determinant of performance on a laptop is the thermal headroom and the TDP. While a modern lower-end CPU will trounce this mid-range 8th-gen part in benchmark scores, the empirical perception of responsiveness in daily use should be largely similar. As such, programs open reasonably quickly, and the feeling of responsiveness should be roughly comparable to a more modern, lower-end CPU. With 16GB of DDR4 RAM and a modern PCIe 3 NVMe drive in the Western Digital SN570, the laptop more or less flies. I was concerned about reports of erratic fan speeds, but this isn't a problem that I've really encountered. In fact, most of the time, the fan doesn't turn on at all, only spinning up when I perform CPU-intensive tasks. But it quickly ramps down again as it thermally throttles, as one would expect. If I found the performance to be reasonable for the price, the inputs feel like a class above. The keyboard is exceedingly pleasant to type on, with a springy bounce and a nice weight, and the occasional squeaky sound to each keystroke. Keys depressed with a soft thud, and the travel ceases with a satisfying and definitive end, rather than a squishy ambiguousness. There's a nub in the middle for the track point, but I removed mine as it was exceptionally grimy and sticky to the touch. Thankfully, there are numerous replacement parts online, as there are for most of the other parts. The RAM modules are replaceable, as is the SSD and the Wi-Fi card, and the battery. Even the DC power input jack is user replaceable, a far cry from most consumer laptops that solder all the components in service of a thinner design. That's the main attraction of using a business laptop, and the true reason that I prefer an old enterprise device to a new budget laptop. To a certain extent, the laptop is simply inherently more disposable than a desktop computer, as the motherboard is proprietary and the chassis is not standardized. While any phone or computer is a depreciating asset, I think it makes especially little sense to be spending lots of money on a laptop, especially on one in which few of the parts can be easily replaced. With a used business laptop, you get the benefits not only of a moderately more premium design and an elevated materials choice than a comparable new budget laptop, owing to it already being depreciated, but you also get more useful life out of it as well, owing to the more repairable design. I would caution any prospective buyer to thoroughly investigate contemporaneous review articles and the original spec sheet, as business laptops tend to make their own set of compromises that the regular user may overlook. One key area is the quality of the screen, as business laptops are designed to show Excel spreadsheets and PowerPoint slides, and so many have low color gamut panels with not very good motion performance. If there's any dilemma, I would say it's in the refurbishment program itself. While I can live with a few dents and can clean off most of the sticky residue, there's still seemingly little value in going refurbished versus simply buying used. An Apple refurb laptop, this is most certainly not. Sadly, by its nature, it's hard to find used business laptops in the open market, as they were usually bought in bulk by enterprises. If you manage to snag one, however, it can be a really good deal. Otherwise, as long as you're handy with a damp clock, a used business laptop from Dell Refurbished might just be the best budget laptop to get. Thanks for listening.